I'm so grateful to be here this morning on this beautiful Mother's Day. I would like to welcome my daughter Kelly, and I have paid her handsomely not to say one negative word about me. For sure. And Reverend Doug, it makes me so joyful to know that you are going to be here as senior minister. And this church has no idea the gifts that he brings with us. And Troy, thank you both so much. What a great duo. We couldn't ask for anything better. Thank you. James Buchanan, I'm so glad to see you. Welcome here with my dear friend Sharon and Rick, and every one of you. Sean, who's driven, where is Sean? I think, did he leave? He was here. He drove a long way. He may have had to go home because it was such a long drive home, but we're glad he's here. So, and I want to thank Herb and Ahmad, obviously, but Herb and his beautiful wife, Nancy, who's very talented, are celebrating their 20th wedding anniversary on Thursday. So I want to welcome you. And if you're here for the first time, we welcome you, and we're so glad you're here. So anyway, and Raheem, where's Raheem? He disappeared too. Raheem, thank you. He came in at the last minute. He's done just beautifully for us. Thank you. Such lovely energy. So I like to start with a little joke. Are you ready? Okay. So there were three sisters. One was 100, one was 99, and one was 98. So the 100-year-old went upstairs to take a bath, and all of a sudden she called downstairs and she said, I need help. I've got one foot in the tub and one foot out, but I don't know if I'm coming or if I'm going. So the sister, who was 98, said, don't worry about a thing, I'm on my way up to help you. Well, she stopped midway on the stairs and said, uh-oh, I don't know if I'm going up or I'm going down. So the youngest sister said, do not worry about a thing. She said, I've got this, knock on wood, covered. And she didn't move. So they said, well, where are you? She said, well, someone's knocking at the door, so I have to answer the door. But for the grace of God. Oh, so Charles Fillmore was the co-founder of Unity, this magnificent metaphysical teaching, a spiritual philosophy, and it is practical spirituality, where we take the gifts of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus, and we apply them to our daily life. You know, years ago when I would go to church, and I loved church and was raised in a different philosophy, but I would often leave wondering what was said. How could I apply that to my daily life? And then I first found Centers for Spiritual Living, and then Unity, which are really very close, married to each other. And I had something to carry out into my life. I had tools to live my daily life. And we certainly all need that, don't we? Anyway, Charles Fillmore said that it is a marriage between the female, which is wisdom, and the man, which is the intellect. So he was very aware it took two. Reverend Michael Beckwith says it this way: God is the love intelligence that governs this universe. And isn't that the truth? It takes mother's energy and it takes father energy. Mother, Father, God is where that comes from. So happy Mother's Day to every mother, whether or not you're a mother or mother to an ant, mother to a furry animal, we all have that mother energy. And that's what we want to celebrate today, the mother energy within each and every one of us. So I thought to myself, well, actually, my daughter's a psychologist, so I run by what she says. She said, no, you can't say that, so scratch that. I also have her on payroll, just so you're all aware. But anyway, she said, how about talking about this? How do we mother ourselves? And I thought, what a great concept, because oftentimes we're busy mothering uncles or nephews and nieces, and obviously our children, our furry animals, our friends that we mother, and how much energy do we have left for ourselves? So let's look at love, for God is the true love intelligence that governs this universe. How much are we loving ourselves? You know, God so loved the world that he sent each one of us here to represent the power and the presence and the love that God is. And so often we love other people, but we forget about ourselves. And you know, the first time I ever heard that we can only love another person as much as we love ourselves, I knew I was in real big trouble right then and there. So it's a matter of recognizing who and what we are. You know, it's the great kaleidoscope of life. And often we forget the importance, not from the ego standpoint, because it has nothing to do with the ego. This is not the ego. This is a knowingness, an understanding of who and what we are, and the absolute value we play in life itself. And life, which is one of our 12 powers, life itself, as is love, one of Charles Fillmore's 12 powers. And in these 12 powers, he said, it enables us to live the life we were meant to live. So we have this love intelligence within us. And God so loved the world. So we've got this kaleidoscope of life. And each one of us are a part of this magnificent stained glass. And every time, remember as children, we would turn the kaleidoscope and different colors would appear. Well, each one of us are a part of that kaleidoscope of life. Our lives have meaning and they have purpose. And without us, that beautiful part of the kaleidoscope never shows. It's blank, it's empty. So the world is without our gifts. And we may say, I know for many years, what gifts do I have? Well, we have so many gifts. And so often we're told, oh, well, you know, kind of disregard yourself and love others. But we can't do that unless we love ourselves. You know, we look at the life of Jesus. He was a carpenter. He came from humble beginnings. And yet he had a great love of himself and his dignity. And he walked in that love. And he talked in that love. And he acted in that love. And that's the call to you and me today, to love the mother energy within us, to love the mother that we are to others, but also to embrace the mother in ourselves, because it is our job to love and to honor ourselves. And if we don't do that, then again, part of that light is missing, because we are here by divine appointment. And never forget that. God, there was an old saying, my older son almost had a stroke when I put it up, but it said God, because he was always into some mischief, beyond what the sermon could even go today, but we won't go there. But anyway, he was jumping from somebody's roof into a pool, which he was not supposed to be there. And of course, he was out doing some wonderful service, he told me. And all of a sudden in the Park Cities News, he was on the front page, up on the roof, jumping in, right? So anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, to just remember that we are here not only to love others, and of course we love God. We love that God energy, no matter what we call God. Just Joe Dispenza calls God the grand operational design. So take away today that your own importance, not from the ego standpoint, but God created you and God created me for a purpose. And that purpose is to love God, to love others for sure, but to love ourselves. And we can only love ourselves when we truly value ourselves. How kind and good are you to yourself? How often do we put ourselves last, and we're so tired that we can hardly even get our heads down on the pillow at night, forgetting about ourselves, to rest, to eat properly, to sleep well, to really love ourselves, because God loves us so much that God created us out of ourselves. So the first point is love yourself. Love that mother energy within you, that as we are to love others, we must love ourselves, because we cannot love another person as well as we are called to love them unless we love ourselves. So the second point I'd like to talk about is intuition, that voice within us that is forever saying, you are my beloved, in whom I am well pleased. And it doesn't matter the mistakes we've made, doesn't matter. You are my beloved, in whom I am so well pleased. So how well do we listen to that voice of intuition? We often kind of blow off intuition, or maybe not the correct word, but scoff at intuition because, well, we know that if we're supposed to turn left and intuition says turn right. But intuition is so much more than that. Intuition is God speaking to us through that still small voice within. And that's why we pray and we meditate all the time, that we can be silent enough, because that voice is always speaking to us, always speaking to us. So I'm going to tell a little story. Again, you know, I paid my daughter well, so she can't get upset. So we were on our way to the Dallas Board of Elections last week or 2 weeks ago. We were taking a class because we work with the elections. And it's a funny place. It's kind of off to the side. So Kelly drives wonderfully, and she's so good and kind to me. I couldn't add. She knows what I'm going to say. I can see it in her face. She's so good and kind. I could not ask for more one. God's gift. Anyway, when she drives, you know, like that old joke, I pray. So, oh, she knows I'm telling the truth. She said, Mother, why are you holding on so tight? I said, I'm in prayer. But anyway, her Google Maps was telling her to go one way, and she finally said, Mom, she said, this is not the right way. Something's telling me to go this way. Well, of course, the minute she turned, we were right where we belonged. So it was her intuition that she followed, because if she hadn't followed that intuition, God knows where we would have been. So even though I pray when she drives, it's probably my merit into heaven, if there is such a place that, I mean, we know there's a wonderful place for us, but whether it's in the sky, who knows. But listening to that intuition, because that intuition is always saying to us once again, you are my beloved child, in whom I am well pleased. When that intuition says to us something inside of us, sometimes it doesn't, we don't hear the voice, but there's a feeling that that person isn't the right person for us. That's not what party we should go to. It's always speaking, and I don't know about you, but every single time of the 5 times I've been married, no, I'm just kidding. Now people will take that seriously. But perhaps if I would have listened a little closer, I may not have married that second time. Who knows? Because something intuitively always is saying to us, do this, don't do that. Not in a parental voice, but in that still small voice, because that is how God speaks to us. And it's only through meditation and the quieting of the mind that chatters all the time. How often does that mind tell you, you are wonderful, you are God's gift to life? Or does it tell you, you've not made another mistake, you haven't done this, you haven't used the right hair tonic, you haven't, always clattering, talking to us. But if we can be still through our meditation and through our prayer to know the truth, that yes, there may be a lot on the human realm that I could improve, for sure, in that human realm. But in the spiritual realm, I have been called, and you have been called, to be here now at this time and this place, because we are needed, each and every one of us. We are needed to anchor peace. We are anchored here to anchor love and wisdom and clarity. We are anchored in such a way that when people see us, they may not know what they're seeing, but they feel better. They feel better because there is something that glows within us, and that is the presence of God that is so anchored in our prayers, in our meditation. We are, as the song goes, we are the face of God. We are here because we have meaning and purpose, and we have been called. You know, when I started ministerial school, we were all handed this, and I still have it framed, this beautiful picture of a hand coming through the clouds. And it said, you are called. And that's you and that's me. Because if we weren't called right now, we would not be here. And if we were not called, we would have already made our transition. Our work would be through. Our work is not through here. We are anchored in a unity teaching that not only is the intuitiveness that is guiding us, leading us, directing us always, where we should go, with whom, it guides our whole life if we listen. And it's so important to listen to that voice. And Charles Fillmore, who is the co-founder of Unity, talks about wisdom and understanding. And understanding is one of our 12 powers. And to understand that voice within us. And again, it's the quiet, to not only hear the voice, but understand what that voice is saying to us. And it is always saying that you are the love of my life, because each one of us are the great love of God's life, because we are here to represent the power, the grace, the love that God is. So we love ourselves. We are intuitive, and we forgive ourselves. But I want to go back to loving ourselves for a little bit. Myrtle Fillmore, who is the mother of Unity, co-founder of Unity, loved herself enough through a deadly illness, because tuberculosis at that time, in the early 1920s, people didn't recover. But she loved herself enough to say, I am a child of God. And as a child of God, I do not inherit illness or sickness of any kind. But she stood in that awareness that I am a child of God, that I am, that is so powerful within each of us. She loved herself enough, and she mothered not only her own children, but she mothered all of us through her writings and through her deep love, not only of herself, not from ego, but because she knew and understood who she was. And the last point of my 27 points, so just be with me. No, I always say that. But people think I'm kidding sometimes. Sometimes they're not. That's the problem. And the last thing is forgiveness. Forgiveness. Oh yes, I will forgive this, and I will forgive him, and I will, or maybe not, just depending. But how often do we forgive ourselves? I don't think that there's any one of us, not mother, whether you're a mother to your furry friends or your whoever, but to forgive ourselves. To forgive ourselves for our judgments against ourselves. We are so hard on ourselves. So to have a clear slate, to forgive our mothers, because they did the best they could. As I have grown older, in my 50s now, you see, I don't hear a lot of laughter, so you really believe me. I have come to, really, and I mean this sincerely, I had wonderful parents. I really did. They were good people. And they were very involved with my brother, who is 6 years younger, but now he's 6 years older. You understand what I'm saying. He gets upset every time I say he's 6 years older. But anyway, he had 17 major operations. 15 of them, we never knew if he was coming back alive or dead. So I was kind of left on my own. And I always, it was an undertone of feeling perhaps neglected. I loved my brother so dearly, and it was always so frightening to know if he was coming back alive or not. And it wasn't until my parents lived in Hot Springs that we were going through some old pictures, and she said, Barbara, I don't remember you for all these years we were going through. She said, I just have no remembrance of you at all. And at first, it was very hurtful, to think that they forgot me. But and truly, when I tell you, it's only been in the last year that I have had a deeper understanding of all they went through, and that they did the very best they could under extremely difficult circumstances. And you know, that's part of where my belief in God came into. My grandparents, who really saved my life, lived right down the street from a church, Little Flower. It was a Catholic church. And I would go into that church and light candles, praying that my brother would come home alive. So I spent a great deal of time in a church, which also gave me a gift of deepening faith, because I knew if I was in that church, that I felt the presence of God, that all would be well. So I have so much to thank my parents for. Were they the best parents? Yes, they were the best parents they could have been. And I think that's for each of us, no matter what we're parenting. It's that mother energy within us. Do we make mistakes? Absolutely. We were not here to be perfect. We were here to learn lessons, to be more loving, to be more intuitive. So if there's anything today that you're holding against your parents, let it all fade into God, because that's where it belongs. Let it fade into God. Let's be clear today. This is the first day of the rest of our life. This is the day that God has made, and we are here to rejoice in it. And let's rejoice in that freedom, that there's nothing left to forgive, because we are clear. We are here now to absolutely represent the power and presence and the grace and the love of God through our love of ourselves and others, but a love of ourselves for the mothering that we have done throughout our lives, whether it's children. We could go through the whole list, but to also love ourselves, to listen to the intuition within us, because that is God speaking to us, and to have the silence within to understand that intuition and to obey. Years ago, I was talking to a dear friend of mine who really co-founded Agape with Reverend Michael. They grew up together. His name was Reverend Nirvana Gale. And I was supposed to be in a meeting, God knows where in LA, but it was a long way away. And I was sitting in bed thinking, I really don't want to drive that far. And lo and behold, Nirvana called. And he said, are you coming to the meeting? I said, I don't know. It's a long drive, blah, blah, blah. And he said, honey, I want you to be obedient to the voice within you. And when he said obedient, it really ruffled my feathers. I was raised in a church where you were obedient, but I got it. It was obedience to the voice within me that was really saying, go to the meeting. And I learned so much. So the voice within, being obedient to that voice within. And the last thing is forgiveness. And I was just talking to one of my grandsons. I was sitting in the car, Reverend Doug is waving, and I'm talking on the phone. He must have wondered why I was just sitting there. But he and I have this thing about the 40th verse of Isaiah, that they that wait upon the Lord shall fly on the wings of eagles. They shall not grow faint or weary. But for each of us today, on this Mother's Day, on this magnificent day, where we honor not only our mother, our mothers, fathers, but we honor the energy within us. So we too, just what Isaiah said in verse 40, that we shall fly on the wings of eagles, honoring not only our mothers, but ourselves. We honor the Fillmores and this wonderful philosophy we're all in. So I just say to you, happy Mother's Day. God bless us all, and we leave here on the wings of eagles, and thank you so much. God bless you.